This is a short video on how to calculate a Fibonacci sequence using a for loop. A Fibonacci sequence is basically calculated by saying the previous two numbers equal the current number, and you move down a chain continuing to do that. So for instance, a Fibonacci sequence would be 0, 1, because they always start with 0 and 1. And 0 plus 1 is 1, and 1 plus 1 is 2, and 2 plus 1 is 3, and 3 plus 2 is 5, and 5 plus 3 is 8. So that's a Fibonacci sequence. And what we have to do is replicate this some number by using some number of times. So 7. So we would 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 8 would have been the final number for the Fibonacci sequence. And we have to replicate this using a for loop or using a loop. The best loop to do this is a for loop, and we have 3 utility variables, and I'll explain those in just a moment. For our for loop, we have our for keyword. We have a utility variable counter, which is created for us by the for loop. We do not have to do any predefinition. We have the in keyword because we're going to use the range function. Now here is something to remember about this particular use of range function. I want to include the final number because range is not inclusive of the number. So if this were 7, it would go from 0 to 6 and do it 7 times. But in this case, I want the range to be inclusive of the number, because I really want to do this 8 times, because we're always going to start with 0. And so 0 doesn't really count. So we're going to start with 0, and we're going to go to n plus 1, whatever that is. So for counter equals 0, we don't do anything. Like I said up here, it's just 0. It's just the starting place. If counter is 1, so we have an if condition inside. First of all, we have an if condition inside our for loop. The first if condition is the first thing we'll hit. What are we going to hit first? Well, we're going to hit 0. Okay? So 0 is, we don't have to do anything. We just print. The same with 1. The next thing we're going to hit when we go through this sequence is the number 1, because we've gone from 0, we're iterating next, and our counter will be 1. So if our counter is 1, and remember here we're using the double equal sign for equivalence, we really don't have to do anything because we just have to print out 1, because 0 plus 1 is 1. So that's all we have to do. Now, otherwise, when we get past 0 and 1, when we get to 2, we have to do something. And what we have to do is keep the previous two numbers and then print out the current Fibonacci sum. So the previous two numbers, first of all, we're going to calculate the sum. So num1 will start at 1, and num2 will start at 0, because we have to add a 0 and a 1 together. So if this is 2, we've added 0 plus 1, and that's our sum. And then what we're going to do is we're going to store what was num1 into a variable num2, and then we're going to say num1 is the new sum. So basically what we have done is we have gone and said num2 is now 1, num1 is 2, and now we can go through, and we're going to print that out, and we're going to go through the loop again. And that's how we're going to do it, each time moving these numbers. Num2 will become the next number, and num1 will become the sum. So we can continue to add them. So now let's run this and see if it's right. So let me close this terminal window. We're going to run Fibonacci, and I didn't run Fibonacci because I was on the wrong file. Let's try this again. Okay, so we got exactly what we expected. 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and 13. And we can easily change n to any number that we like. We can change it to 10, and we can run it again, and it will go to 55 because 13 plus 8 is 21, 21 plus 13 is 34, 34 plus 21 is 55. So that's how you do a Fibonacci sequence with a for loop. This has been a short video on using of calculating a Fibonacci sequence with a for loop.